Love your t-shirt, Andy.
Hello, good evening and welcome to episode 40 of Montague Island Books. And I've got two great guests that come along this evening. We'll talk about how, for those who are new to the show, we'll talk about how it runs as we go through it. But I'll first introduce our guest author, who has brought along a very lovely friend today. And our guest author is this is off Amazon, so I hope it's correct because I've not got a lot of information on him. But he is a former customs and police officer. And his debut book is just out, I think, just out or just about to be out, but he'll tell us more about that. And it's a debut story. It's a crime series set in Hampshire's New Forest, where he lived for 30 years. He's an avid reader across the crime genre. He's a reviewer for Shops Mag, and he's regular at crime writing festivals. He now lives in West Sussex and works in property. I'm very delighted to welcome to the island AJ Hill, or better known as Andy Hill. Hello, Andy.
Joe, thanks ever so much. Now, yeah, you've got it all right there. That's pretty much accurate, I'm afraid. I dare say, there's probably a few people who will get to see this on YouTube who will know me from crime festivals.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So first of all, if you want to sort of tell us a little bit about you and about your writing, and then we will, then you can bring your guest in and tell us a little bit about your guest this evening. So start off with with you. Tell us a little bit more about you than what I've already discussed, and then tell them about your book.
Well, I was born in West London, and my father died when I was quite young, when I was only 5 years old, and we'd moved down to Bournemouth at the time. He was a headmaster down there, and he passed away quite suddenly, unfortunately. And my mum put all three of us boys in for scholarships at a boarding school in North Hampshire, Wandsworth College, and we were all lucky enough to get scholarships there. And I was a boarder there for 7 years until I was 18. Did my what used to be called O-levels back in the day. Yeah. There, and A-levels, went on to uni and got a degree. Loved my time at Law Wandsworth, and my very closest friends are still guys that I went to Law Wandsworth with.
Great.
And the strange thing is, all of the three particular guys that I'm talking about, that I'm closest to, are all scholarship boys like me. We all lost a parent, so we all had that sort of commonality, which was interesting. So after university, I joined Her Majesty's Customs and Excise. I worked as a customs officer for 5 years, about 18 months in VAT, and then I was in uniform working on rummage crews, which are the guys that go on board ships and rummage and search the ships. And then I worked on mobile task forces as well, which was a variety of different jobs, but some of that was what they call baggage. So it's people coming off ferries and stuff like that. But some of it was looking at freight and VAT fraud and stuff like that, which was quite kind of interesting. I was going to get married at the time, and my customs duties were, particularly on rummage crews, was 24/7. So I was on call out all the time. And so I became a copper to seemingly ease that, and did a couple of years down in Dorset. But it wasn't for me. I have fantastic regard for the police, and they have an extremely difficult job to do these days, and obviously woefully undermanned. They're great. The guys that I've met, ex-coppers particularly, we do like to have a bit of a reminisce. People like Paul Finch and the like. And it really has changed from the days when I was in, which was the good old wooden truncheon and the top hat and a radio that flew off the minute you broke into a trot. It really is a difficult job. And I've got a great deal of admiration for them. And when I came out, I worked in sort of retail for a little while, and then I moved into property when I was 30. So yeah, I'm 34 years in property. So I worked as an estate agent for sort of 14 years of it, obviously that means I haven't got a soul. And then moved into sort of property lettings and property management, which is where I work now. I work for a big company that are based up in London. And we deal with all big investment landlords. We don't deal with individual landlords, but it's a good company to work for, I'm very lucky to have the job. Right. So that's kind of me up to date, yeah.
That's wonderful. Thanks for explaining all that to us. So, tell us now about the book. Is the book out yet, or is it? Because I see behind you it still says pre-order. So, is it out or is it due out?
It's pre-order up until Sunday. Sunday is the release date. It's actually the publication date. So anybody who's ordered on Kindle will get their Kindle drop on the 30th. And then anybody who wants to get the real versions, what I call, I know there's a massive Kindle sort of fan base there. So yeah, for those of you who read on Kindle, fantastic. Any way of accessing reading for anybody, I think is wonderful. Personally, I love to have a real book in my hands. That's the thing that really works for me. You're going to be able to pre-order softback and I think hardback as well, right, as of the 30th. So yeah, if you do buy a book and you bump into me at a crime festival somewhere, please do ask me to scribble something unintelligible in the front.
Great, yeah, because we have a lot of listeners and watchers that are always on the hunt out, particularly with COVID and the restrictions, that are always on the lookout for signed books. So that's the best way, catch you at a festival and do it that way. So before you bring in your guest and tell us more about your guest, give us a bit, without giving any spoilers, tell us a little bit about the book.
Okay, so one of the things that you mentioned whilst you were talking about me was the fact that I lived in the New Forest for 30 years, and that's where the book is set. One of the things that you're always sort of spoken about when you're a writer is write what you know. And having lived in the forest for 30 years, it seemed the obvious place, and there wasn't that many crime writers really writing about the New Forest. Matt Arledge really was probably the only one, and he was actually quite vague about where specifically, and I'm very specific about where I am in the New Forest. I lived on what's known as the Waterside, which is the sort of Dibden Purlieu Hythe area, for about 14-15 years, and then I lived in Lyndhurst for about 14-15 years as well. And Lyndhurst is the capital of the New Forest. It's it's a busy. We always referred to it as the village, and it really is just a big village. And during the summer, it gets really busy. Lots and lots of traffic through there, and I guess that's kind of I based it there really. I had a conversation. I can't remember who it was with, and there is a reason why cozy crime, and I wouldn't say mine is cozy crime pigeonholed, because there's a good portion of it that's police procedural as well. But there's a good reason why cozy crime's so popular, and that's because everybody in the countryside's tooled up. That everybody's got a shotgun or a 2.2 rifle, or there's nasty, dangerous things in every shed. Yeah. Enmity held in the countryside is held for a long time. So I kind of just thought that was kind of interesting thing to explore. Basically, Jack was medically retired when he was 30 years old. He's about 20 years older at the start of the book. He's about 50. And he got medically retired because of a bad knee injury. And basically, he was given the option of fly a desk or medical retirement, and he didn't want to fly a desk because he was a DI. He loved being an active copper, and it seemed like a death of 1,000 cuts to him. And there's a couple of other things that led him to make that decision, which you'll have to read the book for. But whilst he's the central character, there's another very important character, which is Jem, who is his partner's eldest daughter, she's Jack's considered a bright spark, but Jem is like a shining light. She is really, really very, very smart, multilingual, and Jack, shall we say, has been known, even when he was a copper, to stray into grey areas, and Jem doesn't know that there are any boundaries at all. It's about getting the job done, because I think my feeling was that where she had been operating in military intelligence, it was a question of any means, because it could save lives.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that kind of thing, and they have a good dynamic. I feel they have a really good dynamic, and it's and perhaps if we've got time, there's a weird story about how Jem came about, and I'll tell you a little bit about that if we've got time for it.
Yeah, we'll make sure there's time. There's no problem with that. So that's great. So thanks for the background on the story. And I've got a lot more questions, but we will go through them as we're sort of going through your what you're going to take to the island with you. But first of all, very importantly, tell us more and introduce your guest for the evening.
Well, Sumaira Wlison is my guest. She also happens to be my publisher. So my P's and Q's, but the great thing is that we were friends ever before we sort of got involved on a more sort of professional basis, and we've been Facebook friends for a wee while, and then we met at Crime in the Court at Goldsborough Books, and I think it was Teen 2 who was with you that evening.
It was Teen 2, yes.
Yeah. And we just got on like a house on fire. We've been friends ever since, I'm glad her husband's in the other room, because I love her to death, and I've got so much time for her. She is not just a great publisher, but she's a phenomenal woman, and a battler on so many causes, and as we all do, has had some personal challenges over the last 2 or 3 years that I know, she has had nothing but incredible love and support from her friends and her family, and we think the world of her.
Yeah, great. So introduce her and so Sumaira, welcome, and nice to have you with us. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us both. Oh, Andy, thank you so much for that introduction.
You did say the check was in the post, didn't you?
In the post. The 5 was in the post. The 5 was in the post. It's fine. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's so like Andy said, we've been friends for years, and then I was working for an independent publisher, and we kind of, we kept in contact through the festivals, and we got very close. He's always been a really, really supportive friend to me, for everything, because my life is just full of chaos. I wouldn't have it any other way, but it's full of chaos, and he just embraced that, and he's been an unwavering supportive friend through some really public tough times, but there's been other issues which I haven't made public, and he's always been really there, non-judgmental, shoulder to cry on. I absolutely love him. And Mr. Wilson said, "You can take me." He said, "And you can take the kids as well."
And it's all on video.
I mean, it is a cliche, and I know Nick, who's watching, she's one of our authors as well. But Nikki and I, we kind of always wanted that family feel, and it is a bit of a cliche, but it is a family. We've got 50 authors, very, very different authors across the genres, a real plethora there, and but everybody gels really well. It's really, we've got a great team behind us. It's been quite a whirlwind, to be honest, because we initially only set up Spellbound just as, I think we were at the last book event in 2019, which
wow.
was an Narendra book launch for Vanda and Steph Broadrib, and that was the last kind of book event, and then the world went into lockdown. I think it was literally 15 days later.
Wow.
And we kind of initially we were, you know, I'd left my job. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to continue with publishing. I knew I did, but it was so hard with 4 kids. I wasn't well either. So Nikki and I kind of, you know, we'd always said we wanted to maybe try and do something together. And we were sitting in a little pub. We were just on our way to the meeting, a couple of pints. It was lovely. I went up and met her. And we said, why don't we just do like sort of a publicity service, you know, like for self-published authors, you know, give them a bit of, Nikki's got editing experience. Sorry, I've got a really heavy cold and my voice might actually go. And that was that. And then the world went into lockdown. And then at the same time, I was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, gosh.
So I was supposed to have my first round of surgery on the 23rd of March. And obviously we went down into lockdown for the 22nd of March. And that was, I was told, you know, just while, I think it was 2 weeks, wasn't it, to flatten the curve. It was actually 8 months later before I actually got any treatment.
Wow.
So, and in that time I grew iller and iller. It was mentally, it was really traumatic as well. But obviously, you know, I think in the last 2 years, I'm cancer free now. For now, touch wood.
Yay!
It worked. Unfortunately, because of the delayed treatment, it meant that my staging had gone up by the time I was treated. So there is a chance it's going to come back. But you know, I embarked on a sobriety journey 5 months ago now. 150 days today.
Yay,
actually.
well done.
So that's
Brilliant.
kind of changed things. The business has been a huge focus for us. It was really difficult because I know there's a lot of digital publishers out there, and to be honest, our sales are pretty equal. We sell just as many paperbacks as we do ebooks. There is still a demand there for paperbacks, especially horror. We have a lot of horror books.
Yeah.
Nikki and I kind of, you know, we've been on the edges of the industry for about 20 years between us, and we've seen so many phenomenal writers that just haven't got the break. And I think, you know, I'm not, you know, this isn't a quip at the industry, but I think the industry has become it's very comfortable. It's very, okay, if this works, that's it. You know, you've got to step outside the box a little bit, and that's what Nikki and I do. You know, obviously we're pretty naturally diverse without having to be a box ticking exercise. You know, we're 2 women. That in itself is a pretty
big thing,
in a middle-class male-dominated industry. Obviously, I'm half Pakistani, I'm half British, so we kind of bring a lot of other things that, you know, publishing has got to move on now. As much as you want, you know, authors want the big launches and the hardbacks, it's not always feasible, and trends are changing so quickly. I mean, that's why I think we saw a bit of a spike in the alternative trends of the genres are selling, because kind of when you live through a pandemic, you're like, okay, well, you know, the apocalypse has happened. I'm going to broaden my genre reading now, because, you know, Stephen King doesn't sound so far-fetched to me. So people, I think the pandemic really broadened people, or wanted to make them step out of the comfort zone. It reintroduced people to a lot, you know, readers. You know, their time, especially in the first lockdown. And, you know, in an industry where digital publishing has been a bit poo-pooed, or you're not as you know, professional, it was the thing that kept everyone going, because, you know, everyone was downloading ebooks. It was, so like Andy says, everyone's reading changes have changed. I don't think people should be judged on whether they want to read on Kindle, on paperback, on hardback, on a phone, or the back of the cereal sitting on the toilet, if that's what they want to do.
Writing, isn't it, at the end of the day?
You know, that is I actually, when I was doing my 7 books to come on, a lot of it, you know, there's probably 1 classic in there, and the rest are popular culture books, because you know, you're on a desert island, you want to be
You want to read what you want to read.
want to be entertained. But yeah, so we kind of set up, and then we initially thought, okay, well, let's move this forward and take it to publishing. And then we thought about we're going to publish a charity anthology for the NHS. This was at the start, so that was published on the 1st of January 2021, and that was it. And we kind of thought, okay, that's it, that's it, we've done it. We kind of, and then we started getting inquiries. People going, oh, you know, I worked with you before, my name's Sumaira, or I've worked with Nikki, I know Nikki, oh, we've met you in this. And we thought, hang on, we've got all the stuff put in place. Yeah. We can, you know, Nikki and I have both been through so much, you know, we're in our 40s and 50s respectively. Okay, we've done a lot of, I have to watch my language, a lot of jobs that we probably don't want to do. You know, women, working mums, working's not built for working mums. Both of us have held down 2 or 3 jobs at a time. Yeah. And we kind of always, and I think it was a little bit of a self-esteem issue, you know, when you're battered and bruised, and you kind of, and then we started doing it. And yes, we're still learning, but what we have got is 100% work ethic. We've got bags full of integrity. Our authors know they can trust us. You know, if we make a mistake, we own up to it. We won't try and, you know, we're not even a year. We were only a year into our first book being published. It was. Well,
I think the thing is, you're moving forward and you're staying positive. Yeah. And from what you've been through personally as well as in the business, you know, that's something to build it on, isn't it?
And you know, the main thing is we are having an absolute blast doing it.
That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Absolutely love it. And I think if you love what you do, if it starts becoming a job, then you got to take your back foot. We absolutely love it. We've got a lovely team behind us now. So we've got so we're not just a publishing company, we've got quite a few initiatives going as well. So we brought in Yes You Can, a women's mentorship scheme last year. So we've got 2 members already, Dee Rocock and Kate Everly. So Kate's, we're mentoring her on the commissioning side now, and Dee's assisting Nikki with the editorial stuff. So we kind of want to give back to, you know, we wanted to give back to working mums, you know, mums in our position. You know, the book community is such a big community, and you get to know these people, you get to know their stories, you get to know, and, you know, it's hard for women to get into publishing. Is still very male orientated, you know, arena. It is, and it always will be. Is, you know, with the big trad, you're always going to have that kind of.
Maybe not always will be. I think there is, you know, hopefully in the future it will even out a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's some fantastic female-led indie presses coming up at the moment. So yeah, hopefully we're paving the way. Like I said, we don't take stories on their genres. We take them on their stories. Yeah. If we can't sell it, we will tell you, but we will try 110%. We will not try and take your book. We will not try and generify it and make it fit into a market because that's the market that's doing well. We let your book flow. Nicole's there, Andy's there. They can attest to the fact that it's very collaborative. We involve our authors every step of the way. Every book is taken on its merit. The authors have input into covers, blurbs, promotions, everything. If they don't like it, they tell us. We don't pull rank. We're like, right, okay, it's your work.
Wonderful.
We're not there to take the glory of your work. You've put your blood and sweat into tears. We're just there to give it a little bit of a polish and a vehicle and give it a platform it deserves. Right. So yeah, it's always, every book's fun. We have so much fun. We've got Mark that does our trailers. Mark Brownless is one of our authors as well. Nikki does the covers, and it's like we said, we get the authors involved, and it's brilliant. It's good.
It's great that you've got like a proper sort of family feel. Now, I mean, I was interested to hear with you saying sort of a, you know, digital and paper, for want of a better word, a sort of roughly average, you know, the sort of same amount of sales. Obviously now as things are moving forward, the bookshops are opening, the different sort of festivals are on and things like that. Are you, without obviously going into sort of too much detail, but are you going to continue in the same way, or can you see that things will change now as you know, the markets opening up and things like that?
I think in terms of the market opening up, so we're quite limited in terms of we don't have print runs. The independents rarely do. We have is print on demand, so we don't get that pre-order. But in terms of where we'd like to take the paperback, especially like the horrors, because they are selling really well, we'd probably like to move it away from Amazon now. Everything's moving up, and we try to get them into some local independent bookstores, especially up at Harrogate, where we know that there's you know, throughout the country, so many indie bookshops have taken such a hit. So that is our long-term plan, that we'd like to be able to, in terms of physical copies, we'd like to have them in as many indie bookstores as possible and support a lot of indie bookstores, you know. Like Andy, he when he writes in a local coffee shop, don't you, Andy? And it's got a book kind of thing. So, you know, we're still we're a very small indie, so we're a small business, but yeah, that's
you're growing. You're growing, and
we're growing. It's not, you know, we just take every day at a time. We're just grateful to be doing what we want to do. Everyone's had a horrific 2 years, and it's just nice, and you know, to have a stable business at the moment.
And I think as well, what you're doing is you're actually opening up the publishing world with yourself and a couple of other small publishers that have started in the last couple of years. And you are actually, by coming on sort of this kind of show and you know, and other sort of book related shows, you're actually opening up the publishing world, because before it was very closed door. You didn't really know what went on. It was all hush hush. Whereas in this last probably 18 months, 12 months or so, that's, you know, the roof's been taken off and you can see inside and see what goes on, and you know, get an idea of how it's done. Do you feel the same way?
Oh, 100%. We've always said, like from the start, we always want, you know, everything, even with our royalties, we're 50% down the middle. We don't, you know, we're not there to make money off of the author's work. I find that sits very uncomfortably with Nikki and I as people. We just don't. We love reading. We always have. We love authors. We just wanted to give our expertise out there, and also use our platform for other kind of things. Like we said, we're doing the Yes You Can initiative. We've signed a partnership with a Pakistani literary agency. So we're going to be bringing in, you know, an exclusive range of Asian Desi fiction to the UK, because there's a huge untapped market there. You know, there's not a lot of books out there catered for Asian women, especially. So there's a lot of women who, because of what they write, they're not allowed to be published in Pakistan. So we're giving a voice to them and giving them a voice in England, where they can freely write about oppression and things that probably would get them into a lot of trouble in their countries. So that's the kind of thing we're doing. We've got a couple of charity anthologies planned and stuff, but yeah, we're just taking it as a time. It's
wonderful. That's good. It's great. It's going well.
Shut me up.
It's going well, and that's what it's all about. So, right, what we're going to do now is we're going to get your packing cases out, and you can start packing to go on your trip to the island. Now, for those people that haven't seen the show before, Montague Island is a fictional island that is off the coast of Cumbria. And it was created by Mike Craven, M.W. Craven, for his book, The Curator, which came out in 2020, I think it was. And basically that's where the idea came from the show, is this little island. I'd just moved to Cumbria, so there was a sort of connection there. And it's a fictional island, so you can take all mad and wonderful things onto the island with you. And basically you get to take 7 books of your favorite books have inspired you, and then basically you get some other things as well, which we'll go through. So what we'll do first of all is we will find out what books you're going to put in your suitcase. So first of all, Andy, would you like to tell us your first book?
Well, I kind of felt I had to take this author's book. Because I've been dropping teaser trailers for Dead Drift over the last week or so, and the first one was filmed at his graveside in Minstead in the New Forest, and that's Conan Doyle. So I've got The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
Wonderful.
So a collection of short stories: Scandal in Bohemia, The Adventures of the Speckled Band, the Red-Headed League, and one or two others there. So I felt obliged to take at least one crime book. So if you're going to take one, I suppose take one from Sherlock Holmes's creator, and it has got that connection with the New Forest.
Yeah, and what is the sort of thing about his writing that sort of really gets you? Did it inspire you in any way with your writing?
I can't say it did really. I suppose the back and forth between him and Watson probably a little bit. But I just I liked one of the things I liked, and this is a thing that runs through crime writing and particularly investigative protagonists, is that they're incredibly single-minded, which of course Holmes is.
Yeah, great, wonderful. Yeah, that's really good. And is there a favourite story?
Oh, for me, Scandal in Bohemia for me.
Yeah.
But out of all of his books, Study in Scarlet, I think, is just an astounding piece of crime writing.
Great, wonderful, that's great. And Sumaira, what is your first book?
My first book is, what have I got here? Chances by Jackie Collins.
Oh, go on. And
Sorry.
why is that one of your favourites?
Well, it was one of the, I remember finding it in the library, and it was my early teenage years, and the glamour and the intrigue, and it was obviously very naughty, and it was that. But growing up, it's still a series. It's the Lucky Santiago series, and it's the first book there. And it's one of my favourite series. I will still go back and reread it at least once a year. And
Right.
Jackie Collins, that bonk buster gets a lot of flack, but if you read it, she kind of now as well, everyone passed her off as a bit of fluff, but she was lifting the lid on the sleaze of Hollywood in those books.
Yeah.
I mean, a certain director that's in jail was what she was writing back in the beach, and that her sister confirmed that. But she writes brilliantly. I mean, I still love a Jackie Collins. If there was a new one out, I used to get her. I'll read them from cover to cover, and not just Jackie Collins. Jilly Cooper and Shirley Conran, Lace. Those kind of books. They were real part of my growing up. I came from quite a strict Asian background as well, so that was kind of my only access to sex, was like reading Jackie Collins books.
But she really opened the door for the likes of Jilly Cooper.
I think a lot of people were scared when they realised that she'd started writing books. I think it was a case of, maybe I'm going to appear in one of these books, and I think a lot of people got a bit.
I bet if you reread them now, in light of what's come out in the recent years, you'll be like, that's so and so, that's so and so, and that's so and so, because it happened to her. Her and her sister, they were subjected to that the early days of Hollywood. So I still love her. I still love a Jackie Collins.
Great choice, and I'm sure there'll be many others that would enjoy that as well. So we're now going on to the second book. So what have you chosen next, Andy?
Hamlet, Shakespeare. I think Hamlet is, for me, is Shakespeare's most complex character. His soliloquy is quoted so often, to be or not to be. And there is the mastery that Shakespeare had of not just the English language, but the human condition. I just never fails to astound me. He is just a wonderful writer, really invests such depth to his characters.
Yeah, great. And is that something that you, a book that you read when you were young and you thought, relatively young, and you've gone back to, or have you read it again since? And how did you find it compared to when you first read it?
I guess the first time I read it was at school, and that was kind of under duress, if you like.
Yeah.
And then a partner of mine some years ago was actually head of English at a school, and loved her Shakespeare, and that encouraged me to go back and reread that and Lear, just incredibly good writing.
Yeah, it's great when you can read a book when you're quite young and then go back to it and, you know, get different meanings and sort of deeper understanding of the book.
Yeah, and of course we have so much of his language in our everyday usage these days. You know, those little phrases that we think, you know, are just part and parcel of the everyday, but they're plucked straight from Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of my favourites is, you know, is from The Tempest, and it is so resonant for me of somebody who basically is a wrong 'un and is going to end up with a sticky end, and it's he hath no drowning mark upon him. And they're on a boat, so he's not going to die in a nice way.
Yeah. We'll remember that one. That's great. So what's your next one, Sumaira?
Porno by Irvine Welsh. It's the follow-up to Trainspotting.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely loved it. Very, you know, nostalgic of my youth, my misspent youth, should I say. But obviously Trainspotting was a huge hit. But for me, Porno, it kind of really got into the backstories of Sick Boy, Big B, and, you know, Spud and everyone. So whilst Trainspotting obviously was a masterpiece, for me, Porno was really got into their minds, and I absolutely loved it. So yeah, I have to have that if I'm going to I'm going on a desert island.
Yeah, and was Porno written in the sort of same kind of style as Trainspotting?
Yeah, it was, and it's the same characters. It's kind of a follow-on. So Sick Boys come back to Edinburgh, and it's kind of, you know, how their lives are basically, because of the way they grew up, how their lives are always connected. Doesn't matter how far away they go, they always come back to the same kind of thing. But it is quite more character driven. I find Porno, it really gets into their heads and the kind of, you know, the thinking behind how they are. So yeah, I like it a lot. I know it doesn't get
No.
You know, it doesn't get mentioned as much, but yeah, it is. The sequel to Trainspotting, it was kind of done on Porno, but Porno had a completely different ending. But yeah, I do like it. I like the characters.
Wonderful, great. So I've got a question for you both now. So first of all, for you, Andy, you know, sort of obviously, you know, from your sort of career, I suppose, you know, it was, you know, crime was the way to go. When you started to write a book, was it always going to be your first book? Was it always going to be crime? Or, you know, have you thought about writing in other genres?
Yeah, I actually I mentioned a previous partner of mine, and her son, who challenged me basically to write a book, and he knew that I was a fan of crime, and challenged me to write a crime book. So that's really how Dead Drift sort of started. Was actually somebody sort of challenging me, and I kind of just put it away for a while after I'd written a few thousand words, and it just sort of, I put it away. It was sat on my laptop, and then Mike Stotter and Ali Karim from Shots Mag offered me a chance to review, and I got one or two books that I actually thought, I could do better than this, and that's, you know, that's not criticizing that writer. You know, that was for me. It just didn't talk to me. And we're all different. We all love different genres and different styles within the genres. But for one reason or another, they didn't really talk to me. And one particular one. The author had like a 6-figure signing on fee, for a debut book, and I got, I think, about 75 pages into it, and I just could not carry on with it, and that kind of dragged me back to writing Dead Drift again, and yeah, that was kind of how I sort of got back into it, and then yeah, moved it forward from there.
Wonderful. And what, you know, obviously that one is sort of out at a weekend. Are you sort of writing book number 2 or a different book, or?
Yeah, so the follow-on to Jetlund 2, which is tentatively entitled Bloody Butcher, and you can ask me about the titles later on, because there is a reason for the titles that I've chosen. Is about 60,000 words written, so I've got about another 30-odd thousand, 25 to 30,000 to write, and you know, and it's as Sumaira sort of alluded to, you know, the thing is, we've all got busy lives and trying to juggle this stuff, particularly when you're working full time. And I guess the big difference is over the last 2 years is that I came away from my desk at 5:30 and got home at just after 6 o'clock. And then I could sit in my writing space and write for maybe an hour or two. And I can't do that anymore because I've just sat there for 8-9 hours. Yeah. So it's really difficult. So weekends really, and getting, you know, if I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, then I'll get up and do an hour or two. Then. Yeah. So yeah, the writing process is a lot more difficult when your workspace and your writing space are one and the same. Yeah, that's it. So, but very interesting to hear the backstory, and we'll come back to you about the titles. And Sumaira, when you know, you were telling us earlier about your story, your sort of life story as well as work. So, when are you going to write a book, or have you already started?
No. My passion lies in making the books.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have been asked many times if I wanted to write I should write a book, but honestly, no, I can't. I don't think I could. I don't think I could do it. You know, it's really hard, and I've tried a couple of times, and it's just not for me. It's not for me. Yeah, I mean, my mum's talking about writing a book, and my mum's actually, she used to be the editor for her uni. When she lived in Mombasa in Kenya. When she studied there, she was the editor for her newspaper, school newspaper. So my mum's kind of was talking about writing a book, and it was kind of her life when she was younger. You know, my granddad worked on the British Rails in Mombasa in Uganda. Then they obviously came over here in the 70s. They were given safe passage here to this country, and then obviously having to settle into life in the 80s as an immigrant, and then the 90s, and then kind of so my mum wants to write a book, so I think she
good luck to her.
Yeah, she'd be superb. She really would. So I've said to her, you write it, you know, and I'll publish it. But no, I don't know. I don't think I'll ever do it.
There's so much going on though. You should like start writing notes. You should start keeping it, you know, on your story, and you know, on your life story.
Yeah, it is. You know, maybe I should write a book maybe one day. I don't know. Maybe Andy could ghostwrite it for me or something. I'm not joking. If you've read some of my messages I send, there's only a handful of people that can decipher my messages. I just but no, yeah, I'm there I'll make the books. Yeah. I'll make the books. I'll leave it to the professionals.
That's your passion. Yeah.
That's my passion.
That's great. That's wonderful. Well, I know you're restricted on time because of the children, so we better crack on with some of the books. So, Andy, what's the third book you're going to be taking to the island?
The Iliad, Homer. I love an epic, and this is truly an epic. And I just always feel sad for him slightly, that having published 2 of the great epic books, he's only the second most famous Homer in the world now.
That's one way of looking at it. I've never looked at it that way, but yeah. And what is it about that book that makes you want to take it to the island?
Well, it has got everything. It's got romance, it's got jealousy, it's got war, it's got politics. It's, there's just this epic sweep to it. And of course, the Trojan War was spread over 10 years. So, you're looking at that, and then knowing that what you've got after that is actually in actual fact the Odyssey. So yeah, it's just and it's just got that little bit of mysticism with Achilles. His only place that he could be killed is his heel. So there is that touch of the gods there as well. So yeah, I think it's a really great, sweeping, beautiful novel.
Yeah, and you'll have plenty of time on the island to go through it and you sort of digest it all, so to speak. So that's great. Yeah. And Sumaira, what is your next book going to be?
It is Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice.
Right, wonderful. And what is it about that book that gets you?
It was again, going back to my teenage years, it was Anne Rice, real sad loss recently. She introduced me to gothic horror, gothic romance, and I think in that genre you will not get a more near perfect book than Interview with a Vampire. It is just sublime. It really, I think she had a way, didn't she? She made a lot of youngsters feel good about themselves. Yeah. And it was a brilliant film adaptation as well. So but yeah, it's another book. I'm one of those people, I do reread books. If I like a book, I read books. I've got certain books that comfort me. I'm sure we all have, haven't we? And I do love, but it is one that I reread.
You always go back to.
Yeah, I'm kind of like sort of suggesting it to my teenage daughters at the moment, but they've branched off of their reading at the moment, and it's interesting, but hopefully they'll back.
Keep trying, you keep trying.
Keep trying.
That's great. So we're getting a lovely selection of books. So what's your fourth book in going into the sort of suitcase, Andy?
Well, I guess it's probably one that goes into quite a lot, particularly of blokes of my age suitcase, because it was something that was kind of almost like a rite of passage book, and that's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
Tolkien.
Yeah.
And again, it has that epic sweep to it, and the mysticism, the magic, the magical sort of nature of it, and being transported to this fantastic world with its own, with its own languages.
Yeah,
and
that was amazing.
He just really invites you to go in and imagine it. And of course, when we got the movies out, I just loved them, because it was pretty much how I thought it would be. In my head, Aragorn looked like Viggo Mortensen, in the thing, I loved, I really loved the books, and I probably read it. I don't know. I'm like Sumaira. There are some books that I just go back to again and again, and this is one of them. Probably read it a dozen times.
Yeah, and as you say, it's not just a case of creating a story; it's creating a world as well, isn't it? For the story to exist in. So it is amazing, when you think that, the process of just sort of starting that off and creating a world, and then sort of creating a story on top of it was just amazing. So yeah, great choice. And Sumaira, what is your fourth book going to be?
The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by the Queen of Crime.
Right, and what is it about that book that gets you?
I mean, it's really hard, isn't it, to pick one Christie book, but I know that was her first one, wasn't it? It was the first one I read, and it was one that I plucked off my mum's shelf, and I sat down with it. I think I was about 10 at the time, and I fell in love, and I remember I hadn't been reading that much around then, and it kind of really made me fall back in love with reading again. And yes, Agatha Christie's probably my favorite one, I think.
Yeah, great choice. Now, Andy, you were going to tell us about your titles, so tell us more.
Okay, so Dead Drift has kind of a double meaning, in that at the opening of the book, a body drifts down the river to Jack, Jack Lunn, and but it also has another meaning. It's actually a fly fishing technique for check nymphing, which is kind of how I like that. And then the second book, which, as I say, is tentatively named Bloody Butcher, whilst not revealing why there is a second connotation to it. Bloody Butcher is actually a fly pattern. So there is this kind of there is a fly fishing theme that runs through the books, because it is set, being where it's set. The River Test is very close by, and that's one of the finest chalk stream trout fishing rivers in the world, in my humble opinion. I have I've fond memories, shall we say.
Brilliant, that's good. Nice to hear. And sort of what is the, have you sort of got an idea in your head, as obviously the first book's getting published this weekend, you've most of the way through writing the second book. Have you got an idea in your head how many sort of books there's going to be in the series, or is it a bit open-ended?
Well, when Sumaira and I sat down and did a Zoom, and we were talking about the book deal originally, I pitched a number of Jack Lunn books, I think 5, up to and that's really as far as I'd gone with that idea.
Yeah,
there is a standalone that is rattling around in my head and insisting that I kind of write it at some point, but I have to get number 2 out of the way.
Yeah,
and then at least I can sit down and say to Sumaira, well, do you want Jack Lunn 3 or do you want a standalone? But I hope people are starting to like Jack, and maybe we'll get 3, and then we can talk about a further contract, and maybe the standalone being part and parcel of that. But I've also the thing about having Jack as an ex-copper is there's that ex-copper experience of his to write about as well. There's 9 years of him being a copper.
That's it.
And there is a character in one of the one of the stories in the 5 that we've already sort of talked about, who is a copper back in the Second World War. And he's also a guy that I'd kind of like to investigate and have a bit of time with, because the New Forest is absolutely fascinating. I mean, obviously, lots of people know about William Rufus, the king, being killed there. But in actual fact, what a lot of people don't know is that the Rufus family were cursed by the inhabitants of the New Forest, because he cleared a lot of the commoners off the New Forest for it to be a hunting area. Yeah. Subsequent to him dying, 2 of his sons died, and one of his grandsons died in the New Forest in hunting accidents. And there is a very, very strong witchcraft element that runs through the New Forest, even up until the Second World War. And the other thing is, of course, in the middle of the Second World War, SOE, their finishing school, was at Bewley.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So there's a lot of
connections,
stuff, to investigate and have some fun with, hopefully.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. And Sumaira, you were telling us earlier about how you sort of digital books, there's paperbacks, there's hardbacks. Have you gone into the sort of the audio books, or is that what's?
We've got our first 2 audio books should be coming out in summer. They might be slightly delayed because they got such a backlog, but we are moving into audio books. I mean, it kind of all really happened really quickly. We're not even a year into publishing our first book, and we kind of signed. We initially thought, right, well, maybe we didn't think people want to sign with us. We were like, we don't want to work with those 2 women, but as it was, people do actually quite like us, so we were quite overwhelmed. So yeah, audio is on the cards. We've just sold rights for one of our American authors to an American publisher, so his book's going to be in American libraries. Libraries across America and Canada. So yeah, there's kind of all different things going on.
Yeah, lots of things going on.
Yeah.
And as you were saying that, you know, there's a lot of people who sort of, you know, want to get involved in, you know, they want to sort of have the books published by you. If anybody's just sort of in the process of writing the first novel, or they've got something ready, what's the, you know, is there a certain time of the year that you have submissions, or are you open to submissions throughout the year?
We operate an open door policy with submissions, so we're open throughout the year. You know, obviously at peak times, there you can expect to wait up to 4 months for a reply, but we do keep an open submissions policy. We don't restrict genres. We've actually got some non-fiction books coming out in 2023 as well. So yeah, it's about stories for us, not genre. So it's an open door policy.
That's super. So they can the sort of access if you know, if people want to take that up. So that's great. So what we'll do now is we'll carry on with the book choices. So we're now at book number 5. So what's your 5th book, Andy?
To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee.
Oh, another classic.
Great minds think alike, honey.
We'll have it as our joint 5th one then.
A joint fifth. Yeah, that sounds good.
Scrub it out.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting.
So tell us, Andy, what sort of gets you about that book?
I think for me, it was one of those. It was one of the things that gave me a public school boy where we had, I guess, you know, we had guys from Tanzania and from Hong Kong, from Persia, as it was then. It wasn't even Iraq, at my school, and you know, my sense was that there was not racism. It was not something that was found within the school, and this was the first time really that I read something where there was really strong racism within it. But then you have Atticus Finch, who is this incredible battered knight on this dusty steed, who it just stands for justice and right and fairness, and Scout, of course, who is just this wonderful, pure and innocent character. I just loved it. But equally, as I say, it introduced me to this concept that there were people out there who thought that that people of color were lesser beings.
Yeah, and as you were saying, you know, as a school child, that must have been quite a strong story to read, really, as well, and make you look at everybody differently. So, you know, and is it a story that you've sort of read again recently, or?
I probably haven't read it for, I don't know, 25 years, something like that. So you look. I think we have such continual reminders of racism on a daily basis. You know, you've only got to open up your Facebook feed and see what's going on.
That's right.
And you know, that we live in increasingly polarized times.
Yeah.
You know, partially due to some of the political situations here and across the pond, and indeed in Europe now. It's a frightening. For me, I find it astounding that people would judge people on their sexuality, on their ethnicity, on their religion, or whatever it may be. Because a good person is a good person. Everything else is irrelevant.
Yeah, that's right. It's like we were saying about the books, you know, it's not what genre it is, it's the writing, and it's the same with people, you know, good people are good people, aren't they? So that's great. So great on that. And Sumaira, what is it about the book that I imagine you probably echo a lot of what Andy's just said?
I think Andy summed it up perfectly, to be honest. Obviously, on the flip side of the coin for me, I grew up with racism, experiencing racism. You know, it was the 80s. It was in everyday life. It was kind of, it was a different generation there, but you know, so it was really good to read a book where you, for the first time, I think I read a book where I felt, actually, I get this. I know where this is all coming from, because I can feel it. And obviously, it's so relevant now in this day and age, because I don't think I've seen the level of racism that we've seen since the referendum in this country to what people like myself had growing up in the 80s and 70s. And we honestly did not think we'd still be fighting this battle for our kids. We thought we had it hard enough, and it was bloody hard growing up in the 80s and the 90s in this country, you know. And, so we won't dwell into politics, because but yeah, on the flip side for me, it was obviously, you know, it was a book I could relate to. And you know, she's a fantastic writer, isn't it? The way she wrote it with such sensitivity, wasn't it? You know,
emotion and feeling, everything.
Just phenomenal, just brilliant. Really
a great book, and I think we've had that chosen before as well, so it's a popular choice. So we're now on to book 6. So what's your next book, Andy?
Again, this for me was another rite of passage book. This book was published in the late 60s, and in my humble opinion, is the finest science fiction book ever written, which is Dune, Frank Herbert.
Dune,
and you know, they've just brought a movie out, which they've cut the book into 2 parts. What I loved again was that again you have this wonderful sweep, and there is fantastic imagination and new worlds and everything like that. But there's also this theme, this thing of colonialism that runs through that, and the oppression of the indigenous population on Arrakis, and the idea of a Messiah, you know, bringing freedom to them, but at what cost? Well, we learn that in the later books. I just thought it just asks your imagination to go on this journey, and I was a very willing passenger.
Another great choice. And have you seen the film version? And what was your?
I went and saw it. I went and saw it the day it opened, and I took my partner with me, who really isn't a science fiction fan at all. But even she said, "Wow, visually it's just so powerful. And the soundtrack is just incredible." And you know, and I think, you know, for the ladies, Jason Momoa's in it. Job done. But I thought it was terrific. Yeah, I think they've done a really good job with it so far. Right. So fingers crossed for the second bit.
Wonderful, yeah, let's hope so. So that's another great choice, Dune. And Sumaira, what's your next choice going to be?
It's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson, because it is just so brilliantly batshit, isn't it? It's just bonkers. It's just bonkers, isn't it? And obviously, it's spawned the whole Gonzo journalism kind of, you know, was it real? Was it half? And it was, but you know, the author Hunter S. He's always fascinated me. I just think he's absolutely mentally, but yeah, it's it takes a certain mind, I think, to be able to read it and not be mentally scarred by it.
Yeah.
But luckily, I've got one of those minds, and I love it. I absolutely just love the sheer. I mean, could you imagine now if he brought that in to a big publisher and said, "Here you go." Out of the thing, not to us, we'd be like, yeah, we'll publish it, but yeah, it's just it's kind of, it's a weird, obviously it's mad with all the drugs and everything of it, but it's quite poignant as well, because it was kind of, the end of that kind of the Woodstock, the 60s, the peaceful, the civil rights movement, everything, and it was kind of, I think, a love letter goodbye to the 60s, done in his kind of mad mental way, but that it was that kind of, it was, because once everything, after 69, everything went, it was a lot different. So it is. I think it's a brilliant book.
Well, it was mad, but then again, the 60s were mad because there was all kinds of mad things going on.
Yeah, it was mad things. He was obviously on very, very strong LSD, and I don't know if you've seen it. There's an article that, doesn't it? It does the rounds quite a lot, and it says a day of Hunter S. Thompson, and it was like, get up, orange juice, cocaine, food, that, lunch, dinner, and he gets up, and then it was like midnight. Finally, he had to start writing. He's putting drugs in him to like fill a hall.
I don't think you quite get away with that these days.
No, you couldn't. But it's a brilliantly. I absolutely. Yeah. The 60s is my favourite genre as well. I'm really fascinated with, especially America in the 60s, and the whole dynamics and the shift and everything. That's right. That's I'll definitely take
a great time. Yeah, a great time to look back on.
Well, because you're probably on the island. You've probably got a few, dodgy berries that you might end up with. At least you've got
mushrooms. Get the mushrooms out. Get the shrooms out.
Be careful of the mushrooms. You're off the coast of Cumbria, so you might be a bit radioactive.
That will work. Improvise.
Experiment.
Yes. That's it. Hunter S. Thompson would be proud of us.
That's great. And on that note, what's your final book, Andy?
Well, I tell you what, I'm really glad that we've got the Tilly and Poe books as well, because Mike and Joe, his wife, I've known for a little while, and had the privilege of reading all of those books. I just love them to death. And Mike and Joe are a joy to spend time with as well. But my last choice is actually Band of Brothers by Stephen Ambrose. It's I mean, I have the box set for which I probably watch at least once a year, but I think it's arguably the last time a just war was fought, and it was ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I think there was also that element of him getting the testament of these guys from training through to the end of the war in Easy Company of the 506th. And Dick Winters, who was their leader, was undoubtedly a hero. And I know that if I remember, but he was such a modest man, so humble. And I know they unveiled a statue of him at the D-Day landing bridgeheads, very shortly before he passed away, unfortunately. To find out the backstories in the interactions between those guys, and that they were real people, and what those guys actually sacrificed, life and limb in a number of occasions. Right, I thought that was a decent choice.
And again, a very sort of emotional and moving story, isn't it? So it's like, there's a piece that in the actual DVD box set. They interviewed the guys right the way through, but they don't name them until the last DVD. And Dick Winters is talking about a conversation he has with his grandchild,
and his grandchild saying to him, "Granddad, were you a hero?" And he said, "No, but I fought alongside heroes." And just even talking about it now, I feel emotional about talking about it, because he was undoubtedly a hero.
Yeah, and I think that's a case of a lot in that situation. They saw other people as being heroes, but they didn't see themselves as being heroes. And I think that's probably, a good thing to sort of remember, isn't it, really? So that's great. Wonderful choice. And Sumaira, what is your last book going to be?
My last book is A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth. So,
Great.
it was I read it growing up, and it was the way it was set out, the Asian culture is very different with their views on marriage, so that kind of broke that boundary. It was it was interfaith, it was quite illicit, they weren't supposed to be together, so that kind of, and it was written by an Indian man as well, so it was obviously had a lot of authenticity to it. But and obviously the BBC did the recent adaptation. That's still one book that I read time and time again. It's just, even just reading it is so vibrant. You can you're transported back to India, to the subcontinent with everything. So it's quite nostalgic for me as well. So
that's great. Always good to get a nostalgic book in there. So that's great. So it's 7 great books from both of you, wonderful books, and I'm sure you will be swapping books while you're on the island as well. And as Andy said earlier, because this is a fictional island, and as I say, the name come up from Mike Craven's curator, there is a sort of imaginary Kindle on the island with all the Mike Craven books as well. So you've got even more to read.
Brilliant.
So we believe that on the island there is about an hour a day of electricity. So you can also take with you a CD. So that can be music, it can be, it can be sort of an audiobook, or it could be a playlist that you put together yourself. So what would you take, Andy, as your, if you only had 1 CD you could take, what would you take with you?
I had to think really hard about this. And there was a part of me. Neil Young has just taken all of his playlists down on Spotify.
Quite controversial at the moment, isn't it?
And I thoroughly, absolutely support what he's done. Rogan is a shameful character and really shouldn't be given a platform. Certainly not as big as Spotify. And I'm a big fan of Neil Young. He was writing protest songs back in the day. He wrote songs about the Kent Street massacre and stuff like that, the Kent State massacre, but there's 2 other people really that when I analysed my Spotify, I have more songs of than anybody else. One's Bruce Springsteen, who here we are after 45 years of him, and he's still churning out great music. And
these great sort of ideas as well. I don't know, I bought myself at Christmas the Obama and Springsteen book, and that is like amazing reading, because he's a very, he doesn't always show it, but he is a very clever man as well.
And he's always been he's always been incredibly committed and very very focused on the ordinary working person. Which there's 45 years of Americana there. But in the end I plumped for a guy who really sort of came to my notice in the 60s and sadly passed away a few years ago, and that's David Bowie. And he has produced wonderful music in every decade that he's been publishing music. But I've chosen the Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust.
Wonderful. Great choice. And
5 years, 5 years of Moon Age Daydream and Suffragette City, and and an uncredited Rick Wakeman on keyboards.
Now there's a story, isn't there, on why he didn't get credited.
He was one of the first guys I saw live, and I was lucky enough to see him 3 times in total. Right. And the consummate performer, and you could, he would take Suffragette City, and if you saw him 3 times over those time periods, you get 3 completely different performances. He didn't do a jukebox. He didn't do karaoke. Everything was different, and he changed and evolved and challenged himself right the way through his life. I was incredibly sad when he passed away, and 2 days after the release of Dark Star, which again it's got some fantastic tracks on.
Yeah, and also he was a bit like, I suppose, he was a showman. He didn't just go and stand up on stage and sing a song. He put a show on, a bit like sort of Elvis Presley before him and Freddie Mercury sort of at the same time as him and after him. It was sort of it was a show. It wasn't just going on stage and singing songs. So, but yeah, that's great choice of album. And Sumaira, what's your CD going to be?
Rumours by Fleetwood Mac.
Ah, great. Look, that's a classic album.
I've got to take the Queen with me. She's my idol, Stevie Nicks. So that would be a bit of Fleetwood Mac on there.
And what is it about that particular album that is the favourite for you?
I don't know. All the albums are brilliant, but she's just extra specially badass on Rumours. I feel like that's the album. She kicked the X into touch, wasn't it? She wrote. That was when they split up, wasn't it? The Rumours album. Right. So, and not just that, she kept him in the band and made him play the music while she sang about what a
well, that's a story in itself, isn't it? Just the background to the song and the band and everything that went on. You could write a soap opera on it.
He pipes up every 5 years, doesn't he? And she's a bit like pipe back down. So absolute Queen. Real. Rumours. There has to be.
Great. And again, a lot of emotion in that album.
Massively.
Yeah, so that's great. So as well as this 1 hour a day electricity, obviously you're probably going to spend most of the time listening to your CD, but you also get to take a DVD along. Now that can be a film, it can be a TV series, or whatever it is you can get on DVD. So what would you take, Andy, on if you had 1 DVD to take with you?
It's so difficult because I mentioned Band of Brothers, but I won't take that because I've got the book. But there were two other series that for me I have watched again and again, and it's The Wire or The West Wing.
All right. So go on. What's your choice going to be?
I've got a feeling Sumaira's gone for The Wire.
Yes.
I'm going to take The West Wing then.
But I did have that as my second one.
No.
We're going to have a great time together, though, Andy, aren't we? We've got all our books.
Yeah, we're good.
Two men thinking alike. So what is it about The West Wing, Andy, that would make you want to take that to watch again and again on the island?
It's the president that America should have had. It is Aaron Sorkin's incredible writing. And that one of the things that I do if I'm stuck with a bit of dialogue is I stick The West Wing on, because Sorkin is the master of walk and talk, and but at the same time you're allowed to see the characters, you're allowed to get to know them, and you get to know Josh, and you get to know the president, and you get to find out what the dynamics are. And there isn't a single one of us that weren't sat there at the end desperately wanting Josh and whose name I've forgotten now.
Donna.
So Donna and Josh to get together, And if you were, that's how much you were invested. They were real people. You wanted them to get together and be happy. And CJ who was just this incredible, powerful, driven, this sort of, I don't know, compass. She is this moral compass within the White House.
Very much the same as Biden's press secretary at the moment, Jen Polansky. Every time she speaks, I just think CJ.
That is amazing, isn't it? How a television program can sort of, in a way, not affect reality, but be a mirror of reality.
we want a president who can quote off the top of his head.
Yeah.
Who is an economist, who understands all of this.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's been a while, we're 2 presidents past the last time we had that.
Yeah, but a great choice. And so Sumaira, you're taking, was it The Wire, was it?
Yeah.
What is it about that series that gets you?
David Simon, I mean, obviously I know there's other writers, but David Simon he was a journalist for years, wasn't he? I think it was the Baltimore Sun. That was it, Baltimore Sun. And he was, it was so real, it was so gritty, it was so groundbreaking at the time as well. And it does take quite a while to get into it, but I mean, the way it explores, the real dregs of poverty and the kind of it's just, I can't even say it. I don't know what I'm going to say. It's just brilliant.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, just see
and
it.
It's something that you'll enjoy. So great choices, and you can swap them while you're on the island as well. So
and it's got Idris Elba in it as well.
Yeah, so that's right.
Well, that's the other thing about it is, in actual fact, there's a number of Brits in the cast, but in actual fact, you don't realise they're Brits.
No.
Because they've got such good accents. And I think it's about the 4th episode where Buncan McNulty at the woman's flat, and literally the first minute and a half is just them effing and jeffing.
Yeah.
But you don't need anything else.
No,
it's just fantastic piece of exposition and use of the F word to the best of its ability.
It's so authentic, because that's what, Simon, it's real kind of, it was quite funny because Piers Morgan thought he could have a pop at David Simon, Piers Morgan, then you got a proper journalist, David Simon on Twitter. It's one of my favourite Twitter spats of all time. I'll dig it out and I'll send it across. It's very funny. It was so good. But he was an incredible thing. So I think we've got a few between us now. We'll be quite good. I don't feel
you won't want to be rescued off this island.
Tea and cake, and I'm good to go.
Yeah, you won't want to be rescued off a remote island. So talking about tea and cake, we now come up to food. Now, obviously, because it's an imaginary island, it could be a food or an ingredient that just reappears. So it could be your mum's favourite pie or whatever, and when you're finished, it'll just reappear because it's a fantasy island. So Andy, what are you taking as a food?
Well, I'm going to take curry with me. I love a good curry. I kind of think if Sumaira's coming with me, it's kind of a redundancy.
Yeah,
but then
one. We can forage on the island. I can cook you a magic shroom curry. Then we can have a shroom curry and leaving
fear and loathing list in Las Vegas. Yeah, oh god, yeah. Oh,
so what is it about curry? Sure. Is there like is it something you sort of is there a special one that you've had that sort of really sort of gets you every time, or is it just something that you eat all the time?
I want to think, for me, I've probably got more curry recipe books than any other recipe book, and I love to cook, and I think part of it is that process, and this sounds awfully sad, but there was a time when I ground and roasted my own spices and made my own garam masala.
Wow.
So I was that kind of committed to it.
That's not sad.
But
That's not Asian wife, man.
She'll be calling me Andy G next.
Andy G, yes, that's the Asian wife.
But yeah, there is something about having a curry that just puts a smile on my face.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is, Sumaira and I are going to Crime Fest in May, and I've already been to a really good curry house there a few times, which we scouted out, and I've sent Sumaira the menu and the
so
link
you
to it.
book it in,
like
yeah.
So yeah, we'll go and have a Ruby Murray. Yeah, but I think the thing is that and I think what people do is they go, oh well, we're just having an Indian, but in actual fact, and Sumaira will correct me if I'm wrong, the bulk of the certainly the early Indian restaurants were in actual fact Bangladeshi.
Yeah.
And the sweep of
chefs, yeah.
And the sweep of the type of curries that you can eat, it's just so different.
Yeah.
And you can eat vegetarian, you can eat really great seafood curries, you can eat you can go across to Malaya and eat curry.
Yeah.
You can go to Sri Lanka and eat curry.
Yeah.
And there are all these different varieties. And I guess that's what I love about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
great. Wonderful.
When you go to India and Pakistan, even the regions and the provinces, they all have their different types of curry. Like South India is very synonymous with fish curries and vegetable curries. You go up to sort of like Northern India and it's more meaty curries. So yeah, just kind of a lot more to it than chicken tikka.
So you can travel around the world eating curries. That's the dream, isn't it?
Massively. Or you can just come round to mine and I'll cook them for you.
Yeah. So Sumaira, what's your food choice going to be?
Oh, do you know? Fish and chips.
You're going through the cake and a cup of tea.
No, fish and chips. No, fish and chips.
Fish and chips.
Fish and
chips, can you?
Yeah, I would have said curry, but Andy said curry. So
yeah, so you can't both take curry. Yeah, so at least.
Yeah, well, when we were growing up, my dad had a chain. He had restaurants, but he had Indian restaurants. And he had fish and chip. He had a load of fish and chip takeaways. So I kind of grew up on both of them, fish and chips, and we're sorted, aren't we? Fish and chips
and curry. You won't go wrong with them, will you? So that's great. So wonderful choices. So we now come into the final choice, which can be as mad and as wonderful as you wish, because we have had some mad choices over the shows we've done. So what is your luxury item going to be, Andy?
Well, we're sat on an island, so I'm going to take plenty of fishing rods and fishing tackle.
Say a boat.
Fishing rods and fishing tackle for me.
Yeah, that sounds good. And you'll hopefully, when you're not having the curry, etc., and the fish and chips, you can try another type of fish.
Absolutely.
So good choice. And Sumaira, what's your luxury item going to be?
So I'm going to probably be cigarettes. Is that class?
Oh, yeah, it's allowed. It's a luxury item. So
yeah. So I'd probably have a big patch of rolling tobacco to keep me going.
Yeah, that sounds good, because when you're sat watching all these, listening to all these albums and watching the DVDs and eating all this wonderful food, you'll need cigarettes.
Oh yeah, we'll need a cigarette. Yeah. And it's going to need a few cigarettes being stuck on an island with me, but because neither of us drink anymore either. So cigarettes and tea.
Cigarettes and tea. That sounds good, doesn't it?
Cigarettes is a necessity, really.
Yeah, so that's great choices from you both. So thanks for coming on and telling us all about your choices, and we've, it's given us the opportunity to find out more about you. Now, one thing we didn't discuss at the start of the show was where people can contact you, both of you. So as regards websites, social media and things like that. And Andy, I always ask all our sort of authors, because I know we have a lot of people that collect signed copies. Now, I know you sort of said about you know, about going to the festivals and getting them signed up, but obviously a lot of people maybe in different countries are unable to get. Is there a way that they can get signed books from you mail order?
I haven't. Well, I don't think it's something that we've even talked about, is it, Sumaira?
Not as yet, not as yet. No, I mean, to be honest, I know there's a lot of authors that do it, don't they? They kind of advertise, they'll sell their books, signed books, but I don't know.
I guess if people want to sign copy, yeah, I'm sure we can find a way to do it.
Yeah, it's all down to demand, isn't it? I suppose as well.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
Well, that's great, because I say I know there are a lot of people out there that are interested in the audio book side, but also a lot of them that like, you know, the hardback book or the paperback book, and they like to get them signed. So that's great. So that's something to that they can sort of keep an eye on in the future. And what about sort of contacting you? Have you got your own website yet, Andy, or can people?
No, I don't have it. I've got an AJ Hill Facebook page, and there's an Andy Hill Facebook page as well, so people can find me either as Andy Hill and look for my ugly bespectacled mug on both of them, and there's an Instagram as well, but that's kind of mainly personal stuff. But if people want to follow me on Instagram, that's fine, and that's Andy 28 December. So sorry, Andy 28 DEC.
DEC. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Wonderful. That's great. And Sumaira, tell us where people can get hold of sort of Bold Books, and also if people are interested in submissions or interested in finding out more about your mentoring program for women, etc., how they can get in touch with you, or how best to get in touch with you.
Well, we've got a website, so it's www.spellboundbooks.co.uk. So if you go onto there, we've got a bit about our team, so who we are, Nikki and I, and then our team underneath us. Then we've got all our books that we've got. We've got a library, so you can click onto the book cover, and it'll give you a brief bio of the author and a link to the book. And all our submissions details are on there as well, what our submission brief is, and our contact details. But if you just go to the main website, everything's on there. We're very active on social media, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I don't have the handles to because that is
Caught you out.
Oh,
I'm sure they'll find you. That's
our communications director, Zoe. She runs all the accounts. So look, if you go on to Twitter and you put in Spellbound Books, you'll see us. If you go on to Instagram, it's Spellbound Books in BKS. So
yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. So everybody knows where they can sort of get in touch and sort of, you know, if they are interested in submissions or the mentoring program for women, etc. That's great. They can get
it's all on the website.
Yeah, that's great. So just one final thing, Andy, you've got a publication on, was it Sunday? Is it Sunday?
Sunday, yeah.
So how are you going to celebrate?
Very quietly. To be honest, I'm not really doing anything. I've got a meeting with a friend in the morning. Do you know? I'll just be absolutely honest. I've been sober for over 2.5 years, so I have a meeting with my sponsor on Sunday morning, and so he will be keeping me grounded. That's for bloody well certain. And then I have an AA meeting in the evening. So yeah, but yeah, I'll.
So a lot of self-care going on.
Yeah, and particularly, during this pandemic, it's been an incredible aid to be in a program, because I live by myself in the middle of nowhere in a little cottage, it's been an incredible help to me, and yeah, it's something that I'm incredibly grateful for, and I think one of the things that this thing has done for all of us is made us all appreciate a little bit more what we have in the day, rather than all of this frippery and flummery that the little black box in the corner tells us we ought to be interested in.
That's great. And say, have a great day on Sunday, because it's it's your debut and you're taking some self-care, which is good. So that's great. And Sumaira, as a publisher, have you got anything planned for the release?
No, we'll probably be messaging Andy during the course of the day, but it's Sunday, so I'll be out on the laptop, doing the social media rounds. We've got a blog tour running as well. Right. So yeah, we just kind of, it's we've got a Spellbound author group, so we'll be, but like Andy, I'm not as far down the line, but I'm 5 months sober nearly, so there might be a bit of tea and cake.
Yeah, got to have tea and cake on publication day.
Like a bit of tea and cake.
She's hiding her light under a bushel, Joe. She'll be posting pictures up of her fabulous roast dinner that she'll be doing for her kids.
Oh, it's Sunday, yeah. There might be a roast dinner.
You've got to leave a little bit of space for the tea and cake to celebrate. If you have your roast,
Yeah, we had this beautiful for Christmas, because no one eats Christmas puddings or anything like that, and I got one of the. It was a beautiful Black Forest Gatto from Tesco. It was the finest one, and it was like one of their seasonal ranges. Oh my God, this cake is the best cake I've ever tasted. So you can't get it anymore. It's seasonal. I'm having real.
So you'll be queuing up next Christmas Eve to get your Black Forest Gatto.
I might attempt to make one. I'm a good cook. I'm an amazing cook. I bake, as in most stuff tastes nice when I bake, but I haven't got the patience to make it look nice. And maybe I'll bake a Black Forest Gatto or something.
Yeah, you've got to do something extravagant for Andy's publication.
Yeah,
got to be.
Can I before we go? Can I just give a shout out to a couple of people?
Of course you can. Yeah.
One is to my daughter Hannah, and to my grandchildren Louis and Savannah. I love you guys so much, and they've been just wonderful. And the other person is to my editor Katie Forster, who I couldn't have got this out without her help. She's been fantastic.
Brilliant. Well, as I say, have a great day on Sunday. It's been wonderful speaking to you both. I've just realised the time, and we've been going over an hour and a half, so I'm sorry to have kept you so long, but really enjoyed it. This will go up on social media and on YouTube tomorrow, and if people go on our Montague Island page on Facebook, they can see all previous 39 shows as well as this one. And any authors out there that watch this, we are always looking for new guests to come on the island. So drop me a line if you're interested in appearing, and we can look at sorting that out. So thank you both very much. Have a wonderful evening and a great publication.
Thanks for having us, Joe.
And we'll see you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Take care.